What makes you shave your beard off, by the way? What triggers the phases of beard growth?
I do it every 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
I like the process of growing a new one. Also,
Do you have different attachment to different beards? Like,
I do. Sometimes they come out a bit different and stuff. But you know what? This time around, actually, because I wanted to, so I didn't want to shave it, yeah. But this time around, I didn't groom it properly. So you know, like, because I didn't groom it from the start, I wasn't like putting the right oil and whatever. So if I don't groom it for the start, it grows out in a certain way, and it's kind of hard to like get it to like how I wanted it to be and all of that stuff. So I said, you know what? Time for like a fresh.
Fucked up parents. You.
Exactly.
The beard had fucked up
That's what I've done because I've got fucked up parents. Now, but also there's an element of what's it called? There's like a mental reset as well. It's like I know it's like a season. It's like my own internal season. It's like I know when I'm gonna shave my beard, it's something's changing for me internally, and I'm gonna go for a phase where I'm gonna have that reset again. It's that interesting thing of like I remember like when I'm cleaning up my room, like I get this feeling of like my mind's clearing up a little bit because I think that the representation of the physical environment that I'm in within my own space is what the space that my mind is in. So when I'm clearing it up, I'm also feeling it a little bit in my mind because I'm clearing up my mind at the same time.
I want to start doing that with my hair. So I want to start going through phases of just chopping it off, buzz cut, and then grow out again. Cause I'm a completely different person. I've got like short hair, buzz cut. I look like a completely different person.
What's called buzz cut? Yeah. What's a buzz cut?
A buzz cut is just
everything off
straight, and then like a 1 or a 2.
Yeah, bro. I do that, man.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I wonder what you'd look like.
I got
if
pictures
you've done
if
it.
you want, I can show you.
Yeah, I want to see it. I want to see it. No, that'd be sick to see, man.
Even like when I've got my hair just straight down and it's just bang.
Yeah.
I look like a completely different person, bro. People walk past me, don't even know who I am.
Yeah.
Like in terms of at work, like I'm literally in the.
That's
office.
mad.
Yeah, and people would walk past.
If you took off your glasses as well, I think if you still had your glasses on, I'll probably tell because you got this unique style of like circled ones. I don't think have you got other ones, or do you wear
the same
one?
Style. I have other ones that are big, but I barely wear them.
Do you know what? I asked dumbest questions ever. Why the circle though?
I like them. That's
just
it.
Why?
Because I went to this shop called Bailey Nelson, and they're like specialized in the circular type glasses, and I just bought 2 and I just wore them. I like them. I like the way they fit on my face. But then I just stuck with them, and then they became like a brand. I
feel like it is your brand now. I feel like if I saw you with like squared ones,
all it takes is me to take it off and shave my hair, and you'll never know who I am.
Yeah, I probably still know, bro.
Nah, I don't think you would.
Nah, I would.
I don't think you would.
Do you know? I would know. I know by the energy. I know by the way you talk. I would just know, bro. Yeah.
I do wonder how different like it would be like with business deals, proposals, or speaking to businesses if I had a different look. Like, would they take me less seriously, more seriously? Does it even matter?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because like me and Aladdin were talking about this today, and sometimes there's this thing of like some people have this belief of like, regardless of what we do, people will still receive us in a particular way, and there is that combination of like I don't want to make it complex, but there is that thing of like it's a two-sided thing where I used this example before. You go to reception every single day for 365 days. And you can wear the same thing, you can look the same way, you can say the same thing. If there's a different receptionist down there that every single day, they'll receive it differently or create a different experience. But now you put yourself, and now I'm going to push this a bit further, now you put yourself into consideration of doing things differently every single day, that will create even more combinations of what the experience can become. So it does play a part on how we put ourselves out there, and of course people will still receive us in a particular way.
Yeah. But then ultimately, like, are the words that we use, the attitude that we carry, is what is, I guess, the biggest deciding factor. Like, that's the fork in the road. Because I've been in situations where sometimes you meet somebody and then you think, okay, normal person, like pretty cool person, and then they start speaking and you're like, wow, like I never realized you're onto that level, and then instantly it's like you recategorize them. It's like it's a mental shift. You're like, nah, you know what? Like, for example, I met somebody and, you know, he's built like a brick wall. He's got dreadlocks, you know, beard shaped up, everything looking sharp. You start talking to him, you're like, oh yeah, cool man, gym. You start talking about gym because you could tell like he's a gym lad.
Yeah.
But then he's like, oh man, all of this stuff doesn't really doesn't really interest me, man. I'm more into like spirituality and like energy and that. And you're like, right, like I
Yeah.
didn't realize there's that side to you. And I like I like learning. I like learning how to experience different people in different ways. You know.
No, I love that, man. I think what's really cool now is that the society's like becoming a little bit different in terms of judgment. So I feel like people are starting to become a bit more open minded of like thinking like, okay, cool. If the guy does look like a brick wall, potentially there might be a side to that person that I might not even see from the outside. But there is that thing. I believe that every single person's got something they're like very maybe like passionate about or connected to, but sometimes not every single person's got a way of articulating that. So I think sometimes what misses is like if people can't get it out is because maybe they haven't discovered how to articulate it yet, or maybe they're just still like, just trying to get to that point. But you know what's funny? So last time we shot an episode, one of the things we spoke about is monetization.
Yeah.
Did you monetize
the business? I'm on the cusp of inshallah, if God willing, over the next couple of months, inshallah, I'll be in a position where it'll be. I mean, I've monetized. I've got money comes into the account, but not in the way that's like as reoccurring as I want it to be. It's still like gigs here and there. Speaking actually, funny enough, speaking is where I monetize most. I'm yet to monetize the content side because I'm very niched. So the amount of brands that want to work with somebody who's so niched is limited. But that's why I'm trying to unniche myself a little bit, just tiny bit, just so you can like be more welcoming to more brands, but at the same time still keep your character and not just lose yourself and become like anyone else.
Yeah. Have you got the next stop? Like, what's the next stop for you?
I was thinking about this as I was driving in today. I feel like this is part of the reason why I want to shave my hair off, because like I need a fresh start. I need to refocus. I just came back from a couple weeks of annual leave, and I'm headed in a direction, but I really want to catalyze it and supercharge it, and I want to be more clear and crystal clear about those goals. At the moment, I'm doing what I've been doing, but it's not.
Do you know what? Even though I've asked you that question, and I think obviously like, so some of it's part of for the sake of having this podcast conversation. Obviously, I'm going to ask you some questions and stuff, but I think in general, like I think there's something really interesting about always needing to have the next goal. And I'm not saying that's how you function, but just in general, like I find it fascinating. I'm always around people that say, oh, like when I do this thing, then I'm going to have the next goal, or my goal is this at the moment. Sometimes people ask me that question, it's like, what's your goal in like 5 years, or like, what's your goal in like a year's time, or whenever it is. I don't really have any. And sometimes like I question myself all the time, and I question myself like, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? And one thing I've realized as well, and I'm going to use this in like a sort of metaphor way, I realized that the way I function with particular things in my life is, and there's nothing wrong with it, I'm a passenger in a car. So for example, like people that have goals, and every single person I meet, they're the drivers. So they kind of sit in the car and they go, you know what, my goal is to get there, I'm going to drive there, and I'm going to do this, and do that every single day. I actually sit in a passenger seat, and my goals are driving me. My goals are driving me, and they're like, I'm going to drop you there, maybe drop you there. So for instance, through this podcast experience, I let the podcast drive me. So I'm in the passenger seat. I'm always asking, oh, where's this podcast going to go? Like, what do you want to do? And then what happened, one of the stops while driving was consultation. So that people start reaching out for consultation around podcasting, technical experience, concept experience, all of that other stuff. And I'm like, that's not, if I was driving the goal, maybe I wouldn't have got to that point, which I find really interesting.
I think self-awareness is key in that process, because sometimes when opportunities come to you, unless you're self-aware enough to know whether this is for you or not for you, you might just end up following whatever comes. And you might end up in being in a place that you're not really happy with in the end, because you didn't have the self-awareness to be like, you know what, this is great, it's a great opportunity, but it's not really for me. And I feel like that's a challenge sometimes as well, because I have no doubt that opportunities will come flooding in more and more and more, and they probably have been. And it's very easy to say yes to everything, but actually I think it takes a certain level of discipline to say no. And sometimes it's easier to say no if you have a goal in mind, But when you don't have a goal in mind, you'll say yes to everything. But when you become flooded and you only have a certain amount of time in the day, how do you deal with that?
Is there anything wrong with not having a goal?
Is there anything wrong?
Because because the reason I'm asking this question is because like it's almost perceived, and this is what I'm seeing as well in the society. It's almost perceived that if someone doesn't have goals, like active goals or whatever, it's almost like they need to have them. It's like, what? You don't have any goals in life? What do you want to do? Like, what is wrong with not having a goal and living life, or just kind of being in a moment, or the here and now that people usually refer to, or going with the flow?
You know what's interesting about that, and I love how you brought up this podcast as an example in this endeavor for you, because your podcast is still you being proactive. I think that sometimes people equate not having a goal to being passive, but you're still proactive, and even without a defined goal, you're still proactive, and you're still putting yourself out there. You're still learning new things. So technically, you have a goal, which is to evolve and to grow. But your goal isn't a materialistic, I want to be here. Your goal is to continuously move forward and be open to opportunities. That technically seems like, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but that seems like what your goal is, to constantly evolve and be in a position of service and do something with your life. But you haven't defined it yet. And actually, I think that's more beautiful.
Yeah.
Because your goal is internal. It's internal transformation rather than external validation from a certain thing. And maybe, just maybe, that is actually more fruitful in the long term, because it gives you an opportunity where how old are you now, bro?
31.
You're 31.
Level 31, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So like in that period of time, you're learning to discover what it is that really drives you, rather than assume what that is or come to a quick conclusion about what that is without having explored the depths of what this world has to offer.
Yeah.
You take the time to really explore. So the day you find that one thing that just keeps you up at night, that's when you crystallize an external thing that you're going to work towards, potentially.
Do you know what's funny? Like, the thing that drives me the most and keeps me up at night, keeps me up at daytime, is life. It's just like, it's an interesting thing. It's like, that's
Talk to me about that.
We're flipping the thing now. I'm joking.
I want to hear it. I like this perspective.
Nah, do you know what? I think all the other things, to me, they're kind of like the like semantics of like, okay, maybe my drive is to like help people and do these other things, and I'm not trying to like make it sound less meaningful. It's not. But I think ultimately my first connection is like with life itself, and I think just that thing of like I'm fascinated with life in itself, of what life is, and obviously people always ask these questions of like, what is life and all of that stuff. So I'm fascinated with life, number one. Number two, I think life is beautiful. I think the chance to get to experience this is incredible in first place. And I think number three sits around this thing of like, I don't have to define it. I don't have to define what life is. I actually just need to experience it. And I think when I start experiencing it more than thinking about what it is, that's when the sort of like the transitions and growth and all these different things just happen by itself anyways. Which is...
I feel like that's so much more profound than just having a goal and working towards it. Because we're all going to die. And I feel like some people were so focused on trying to achieve something, they forgot to stop and smell the roses, which is what, like, in a nutshell, what you're doing, but not just to the roses, bro. You're stopping to look at the colors of the trees. You're stopping to look at the, understanding how somebody thinks and their perspectives. And it's just, by the end of life, you can look back and be like, I experienced that. Like, I lived it. I felt like I experienced it. I guess the question for me that comes up is, will there be a part of you that says, what did I leave behind? Will you later in life try to place your meaning on something tangible, or do you think actually the search within will be sufficient for you?
The interesting part is like, I've already left, like, there's things I've already left behind.
Good.
There's that's already happening, and I think sometimes there's that conversation around how much of something you want to leave behind, and do we always need to reach that maximum number of leaving behind, whatever the number is, you know, whether it's financial or how many people's lives we impacted and stuff like that. I think there's this really interesting thing around destiny, like, because destiny is literally destination. Yeah. That's what it is. But people talk about it like it's two different things, the same thing. So if someone goes, I've got a destination. So when someone's going to a certain particular destination, they're going to get it anyways, which is destiny. So I believe, like, I don't believe in destiny in the most spiritual way, but I believe that everyone's got a destiny. Like, we all got a destination, right? So wherever we're going to stop along that destination or whoever we're going to impact is going to happen anyways. It's a given. Sort of like, maybe like in a sort of like a faith sort of way. But listen, I wanna ask you. There's this one question that I've heard recently. It's so amazing. It's the most incredible question I've heard in a long time. What's your why?
What's my why?
Yeah.
This is something I've actually been struggling with for a while now. What's my why? I don't know. And it's been quite tough, actually. I've listened to a lot of Simon Sinek to try and figure it out. And especially like recent events as well have like knocked me in a way that's never happened before. And it's made me question a lot of things. Made me question myself, my ego, who I am, who I think I am, who I'm creating, how I'm perceived, although that's a slight, very thin slice of it all. And then on top of all of that, my why, like why am I doing all this? It's been quite tough. Like I went through a phase where I put so much value on external goals, right? I was like, okay, I wanna have this and I wanna have that, and to an extent they're still there, but I don't know why. So I don't know why they're there. But then that means I've worked. It's not right. Like, you know, the saying says start with why, but I feel like I'm trying to work backwards towards it, and it doesn't feel right.
So two things. Number one, like I appreciate your authenticity and your honesty in sharing that as well. Number one, I think it takes like a level of courage or being brave enough to go, you know what, actually I don't know what my why is, because sometimes some people might actually pretend like they know what the why is when they don't know what the why is. I think, and number two, and this is like we spoke about the why question before, but actually in the coaching world, why questions are not useful in general. It's like in a life coaching world. And I think the better question is usually like, what's your how? It's like,
what is your how?
What is your how? Like, how are you going to get there? It's like, you don't know what your why is, but like, what's your how? It's like, how are you going to do that?
You know what your why is, but the how is the more important question, are you saying? Or
I think how is always the most important question. It's like, what's the process of you getting there?
But then if you focus on the process, but doesn't the why define the destination? So
there's that saying as well, which is, we don't decide our future, we decide our habits.
Yeah.
And our habits decide the future for us, which is the same thing with this. We decide a process, and the process will decide the destiny for us.
Yeah. Okay.
So for instance, going back to the podcasting thing, doing this podcast, that's the process I've decided on. And now how I'm going to get to the next destination is through this process.
Okay. I can share reflections on how I fit into that framework, because I feel like I understand that about myself. Yeah. And I feel like the why is yet to come. But for me, I love learning about things to the point where it clicks, and I like simplifying it, and I like teaching others. That's where I feel like I've found a skill set, and that's where I feel like I enjoy being, because I can get those eureka moments where I've understood something, and then I can get the pleasure of delivering a learning experience for somebody else so they can value. And I feel like I become a multiplier of value. Yeah. Literally, like, you become a catalyst for learning. If you're able to take something, simplify it and share it, you become a means to educate more people, which is literally adding value to the world. And then I like to do that wherever I go. Like, if I learn about personal development, I want to do that. If I learn about airports, I like to do that. Like, that's why, like, I guess my page is what it is, because like I learn something in an airport, I'll be like, that's pretty cool. But then I also learn something about personal development, and I'll put that on there. Yeah. So it's just a place where I can take something and turn it into my own and put it out there. And I like that process. For me, is enjoyable, and I feel like it utilizes my skill sets. But the why is yet to come for me.
Yeah, I like the how. I think the how is beautiful, and you know what? And I think, and it's a beautiful thing. Like what you do is a beautiful thing. Like the taking the learning and then sharing the learning. One of the things, so I can confirm with what you're doing is working. So one of the things I know you've done a video of saying, if you look at this bottle from this point of view,
Yeah.
someone look from that point of view,
Yeah.
then, you know, like what people see is different, but we're looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a beautiful way of simplifying what a perspective is.
Yeah.
And how sometimes actually the growth or the development means that if you see it from that point of view, maybe you just go sit over there, which is the transition of the perspective, and then kind of see it differently. There's this one thing I've discovered recently, and it's so powerful. And it says it. I think it's structured like this. The increase of perception is the start of transformation.
Yeah.
And I was just like, even though it sounds like to some people, they might hear it, they might think it's such a simple thing, but because I'm such a believer of perception or perspective and stuff like that, when I heard it, I was like, wow, actually, perception is so important to transform, because that perception can either be increased through different means, right? Could be increased through a conversation, could be increased through an experience, even though conversation is an experience as well. So experience is quite vague, but it might be, I don't know, might be like some kind of accident, or hence why people go, oh my God, I nearly died, and their perception's increased.
Yeah. I think I remember breaking it down into 3 or 4 things. Like, you can read, you can speak to someone, and what's the last one? You can experience. You can read, speak to someone, you can experience. I'm sure there's more.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's a loose framework that you can use, because an experience is something you've gone through, and then you've been able to reflect back on it and be like, okay, or I almost died. What did I take from that? And then you try and distill like a sentence to take from that. You can meet amazing people, and I think both of you here are that, where they can then pass on that information and pass on that insight to help you shift your perspective. And the last one is reading, and I think reading is beautiful, because you can choose any person in the world who's had an amazing life and gather all of their perspectives and just read them off a page. And then the way I like to think about how that fits into us is, you know how they say you are a combination of the 5 closest people you are around you? Imagine if you could self-select who those people were. Pick up a book by Barack Obama, and you've just replaced one of the 5 closest people in your life right now with Barack Obama. Do that with other people who you may look up to. I'm not saying you have to look up to Barack Obama, but it could be anyone. Pick up a book of somebody you look up to, and you've just instantly replaced one of the 5 closest people around you with that successful person, which means they're instantly going to have an impact on you. I think that's a pretty cool thing. And then that will lead to a shift in perspective. And then what did you say? Perspective? A shift in perspective?
No, it increases. That's how transformation happens. Increase in perspective or perception. Equals transformation.
Yeah, I think that's a worthwhile journey to go down, like to pursue.
Yeah,
just gaining more perspectives, because you're gonna come out different. And I think, you know what, if anything is my why, I want to just transform. Like, it's more about becoming the person, you know, and just seeing how far that goes. And then at the end of the day, when you die, you present yourself back to God as a different person, and you know that it took active effort to get there. And that's a worthwhile pursuit. That's a worthwhile
and that's
pursuit.
where it goes back to how it's like, how are you going to become that person that does those transformations?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I like that. Like, I genuinely think that if anything is worthwhile for now, like if anything's resonating with me, if anything's sticking, it's the chase of transformation, like the pursuit of growth. For me is genuinely good enough. And like, I feel like one thing I've learned recently is that pursuit of growth is actually caused most of the time by difficult, challenging situations that may be perceived as suffering, but if internalized and if dissected, you actually realize that they're not suffering, they're just transformation. It's the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. It's that process that hurts, but what you create is so much more beautiful than what was it there at the start.
Yeah, it's that thing of I don't want to make it such a cliche conversation around the comfort zones, but like realistically, like when I think about it, like all the best things in my life happen outside my comfort zone. And I think, and I think one of the things I realized as well, and this is, I've been thinking about things a lot recently, which was around how did I change my perspective around certain things? Because I felt like I became a little bit stagnant on some stuff. Actually, I still feel like that a little bit. And I was thinking about how do I get like different perspectives and look at the same thing and just see it from a different point of view? Because right now I'm very like maybe biased or very kind of like stuck of looking at it from one way. Like I'm not moving. Like I'm just sitting in this one position and I'm looking at it in a particular type of way. And I remember that thing of like the best things happen outside my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, the only way for me to get that perspective is by coming out of my comfort zone. That's why I'm going to get increase of perception.
Yeah.
To start having that transformation on those particular things.
And sometimes you can be wise enough to choose to want to go out. Other times life forces you to go out there. Like, and those are the times where we start to question, like, oh God, why me? Like, why did this have to happen to me? Like, I had good intentions. Like, I tried to do good, but I feel like I've just been hit by a truck. Like, why? Like, and that is still you living outside your comfort zone because you're not comfortable. You're not comfortable in that pain and that suffering. And I've been recently, like, with the whole stuff that happened with like Twitter and podcast, like the podcast clip that was taken out of context. I was the most out of my comfort zone that I've ever been.
Okay, can we talk about that? Actually, I just remember that.
I want to talk about that.
So, just to be clear, I might have some controversial views around it personally, but just obviously for the audience, I want to just be very clear that my views shouldn't be attached to your views, or I'm not condoning my views to be part of your thing. Just to be clear, by the way. But yeah, let's talk about that, man.
Yeah, where do you want to start?
Yeah. I don't know. Where do you want to start? Do you want to give the background of what's happened?
So here's what I can do is I can I guess paint the story in two separate ways, but I'll go with this one. So I woke up one day and I've been invited to a podcast. I went to the podcast, business as usual. You know, I really enjoy podcasts, and especially this one. I felt like it was a really good podcast. You walk out of it, you think, it's like when you walk into an exam, you think, yeah, it was a pretty decent one, you know, and you walk out and you think all's good. You go home, a couple of weeks later, the guy's chopped it up, and one of the clips that he's chopped up was about a particular topic that you were discussing, where he asked you if you had to start from scratch, if you had to start from zero, how would you go about it? Like, what's the key ingredients that you're looking for to level up? And now, what I done is I made a silly mistake, and I now in hindsight I made that mistake. But anyway, that clip, here's how it went. It was like, if I was homeless, this is what I'd do. I'd start off with just wanting to read books, and I'd ask people, rather than just giving money, give me books, let me read. I want to learn. I want to grow. Now, that was in the context of, if you had to start from zero, what would you do? Now, in hindsight, and actually I could talk about the hindsight bit later, but in hindsight, actually I'll talk about it now. In hindsight, the mistake I made was I connected homelessness to starting from scratch. They're not equitable. Starting from scratch is starting from zero. Homelessness is many, many levels beneath zero, which showed me how much privilege I have. But anyway, that clip got put onto the internet, got a lot of backlash, and then the backlash started to like snowball. And snowball to the point where it went not just normal viral, it went like super viral. And then you had millions and millions of people saying absolutely atrocious things about me and personally attacking me, as if I personally was the cause of X, Y, and Z, and really coming at me, like wholeheartedly attacking me. People that don't know me, people that have never even heard of me, were now creating this narrative of who they thought I was, and they were keyboard worrying to the next level, right?
Typical internet stuff.
Completely taken out of context. For a moment, I looked at my friend. I'm like, now I know how Andrew Tate feels. You know what I mean? Like, it's just literally like, it got to a point where, it was just crucifying on the internet. Even like Munya Chihuahua, like that guy, he was making skits about it. Again, completely taken out of context. Other comedians completely taken out of context, and it hurt. It really hurt. It was painful
because your intentions are very good and pure, and having that,
it hurt and made me question myself, made me question whether I ever want to be on a podcast ever again. I got invited to go speak at a school. That one of the same days that it happened, I got invited to go speak at a school, and I was hesitant to say yes. It reduced some of my self-confidence.
You forgot who you are.
I forgot who I was. Even though I was very secure in myself, when there are millions of people who are trying to force down your throat who they think you are, it's hard to ignore, and that's reality.
I can't wait for that. Like I can't wait for something like that to happen to me.
It's you think you're ready, and then it happens.
No, I literally. So the reason I said so, actually my views are not controversial at all. I think my biggest issue with that situation that you've had is it almost kind of says like you're not allowed to have an opinion, and I think that's what I found really frustrating. And that's why I'm saying if it happened to me, I don't care. Like, but obviously I understand why you apologize, and I'm saying, you know, we're two different people, and personally I wouldn't have apologized, and it's not a comparison thing either. And I think I get why you would apologize. It's like it makes sense.
The apology wasn't necessarily from what I said, but the apology was the attachment of not realizing what a homeless person goes through. Because that I can be very conscious and say I've never been homeless.
But you're still like, so my thing is this, but I get that, but you're still entitled to have an opinion though, right?
You are,
and I think what my biggest issue with the internet is that people attack people for having an opinion. And sometimes, and we all know there's opinions that are not valid. There's opinions that are coming from inexperience, opinions that are wrong. But then are we saying that people can't share their opinion because they don't, you know what I'm trying to say? So I think my thing is just more around people's reactions. And then the funniest part is people that are then trying to say certain things about you, they're the same people who probably made mistakes that are way worse than that.
And there was definitely elements of that. 100% there was definitely elements of that. But I'm the type who hasn't taken it on the chin, right? Like it hurt. I had an amazing support network around me of people who just message me like every day, be like, "Yo, man, how's it going?" And like these are people who I don't even speak to every day. People popped up from like 12 years ago who popped up like, "Bro, listen, man, that was taken out of context. Like, don't let it affect you." I really saw the amount of support that I have in my family, in my community, in people that I ain't spoken to, who literally would mess me every day, be like, "Yo, you good, man? How you feeling? I hope you're doing well. Don't worry about this. That it's nothing. Like, it'll go." So the amount of support that I got was overwhelming, like genuinely overwhelming, to the point where like I even struggled to reply to some of them sometimes, like because there was just so much, and it was heartwarming. It was heartwarming to see. But at the same time, part of the people who came out of the shadows to speak to me were people who had been through homelessness and were able to educate me on what it means to be homeless.
That's beautiful as well.
You know? And I think that for me was the shift in perspective. So while you walk there through central London, you see somebody sat there in a sleeping bag, and you just don't think twice. You think, oh man, come on, like maybe it's part of you, something in the back of your mind might ask, are you being proactive?
But I think so. Are we saying in society that there's no space for ignorance, or there's no space for not understanding? Are we saying that every single individual needs to understand everyone's experience and emphasize with everyone? And sometimes actually, I think the beautiful thing is like, cool, you went through this process, and like you said, you had homeless people reaching out and explaining what it actually means, or people that have been homeless, they explain what it actually means. And I think that's what it should be. I think it should be cool. Someone's made a mistake. Let's not crucify them on the internet. Let's educate them instead.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to make out someone to be this monster, especially when the person is what you said, why is it, transformation for other people, which is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
And it's the internet is a horrible place. And I learned that. But there's one thing that I'm grateful for, which is I used to try and minimize how much I attach myself to the positive. Because for the past 4 years, I've received nothing but positive feedback from the internet. The internet's been nice to me for 4 years. For 4 years, it has been so nice to me. All the messages I get have been so lovely. All the messages I get have been so heartwarming. And it's like telling me how inspirational they find me, whatever, stuff like that, right? And then within a flick of a switch, I got every single person on the internet who had something nasty to say every person who was hurting on the inside, who just wanted to take it out on someone, used me as a punching bag for 48 hours more a week. And they're still in the comments to this day, but I've got over it now. Yeah, they're there. Everyone who's hurting decided to take it out on me. And because I had tried to minimize how much I attached myself to the positives, it helped because I was able to lessen the attachment to the negatives. It was still there. We're human beings, right? We're human beings. Like, I would wake up feeling like crap. And it wasn't a conscious thing. Like, I'd open my eyes and I'd just feel so heavy and down. And I try and get myself out of it, but it was a reality. But I recognized my ignorance about this particular topic. And I done something about it. Last week, I spent a day with 2 charities. I spent a day with a charity called Hand on Heart, which deliver care packages for the homeless in London and across the whole country. They create packages with like jogging bottoms, like a whole winter kit, a summer kit, a spring kit, everything you might need, all the essentials you might need. They go and deliver them to the homeless. And then I spend the evening with a charity called Who's Hussein, who gives out food to the homeless. And on the streets of central London, giving out food face to face with the homeless. I recognized something in myself that I didn't understand very well. And that created a backlash on the internet. For me, I'm like, you know what? Let's put the ego aside here. Let's actually try and learn something. Let's actually try and learn something about homelessness. And what I learned blew my mind. Like how they get into a cycle, how they get into a habit of just knowing where the food shelter is. They know where their corner on the street is. They try to break out of homelessness once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. They get battered down. Before you know it, it's cold, it's winter, and they just lose the will to keep trying. And then they just fall into this lost like population of people who no one even cares about anymore. And people completely walk past, invisible on the street. And here out, like in that podcast, the assumption that I made that this self-righteousness that I carry of, oh, I'm an important human being, somebody's going to help me out. The reality of it is millions of people walk past homeless people every day and no one could care any less.
Yeah.
And that was something I had to educate myself on. That was something I had to go out of my way to spend time with people who've been there, people who are helping these people on the ground. And I want to continue to do that because I recognized how much privilege I have. And and like I said, I'm on a transformational journey. That is my why. I want to keep transforming. If I had the why, that is what it would be.
Yeah.
So when a situation like that comes up and it causes you to suffer, use the suffering to try and upgrade and level up.
Of course.
And that's what I tried to do from the situation. There's other parts of that there's layers to that story as well. One of the layers that, if you don't mind me talking about.
Yeah, of course, man.
The day before this whole thing kicked off, I got an email which invited me to give a speech at Buckingham Palace. And I got gassed. I felt like this is the moment I've been working so hard for. You know, I'm just a kid, grew up in Northwest London, grew up in Council Estate. And here it is in an email saying, Mohammed, we love what you do. We want you to come and give a speech at Buckingham Palace. And I was like, wow. Like, this is crazy. This is mad. And I remember I went home. I was talking to my colleagues at the office about it and I was gassed. I went home, I was gassed. I told my dad I was gassed. And for a moment, I felt like my attachment to this world just dug its heels in. Right? Like, it really dug its heels in, and I felt so like I was really living in a moment of ego. Just for glimpses of time in that whole process, when I read that email, it was pure ego. It was just saturated, yeah. When this whole thing kicked off, I got a phone call from the palace withdrawing their invite. So we've seen all the stuff that's happening on the internet. Sorry, mate, can't associate with you.
Wow.
And that hurt. But what I recognized is I forgot God for a moment. And I was thinking about me. And God was just giving me a little
slap on the wrist. Yeah.
Just to remind me, like, yo, this is all temporary. The palace, the malice, whatever. this is all fleeting stuff. Don't forget why you're here. Don't forget why I've given you all these beautiful things in your life. Don't sit here bum lick into this person or that person or the palace. The palace is nothing.
Fuck the palace, man. Well, you might not want to say that. I say fuck the palace. Yeah, this is me. Cancel me, motherfuckers. Yeah, fuck the palace. Fuck the Buckingham Palace. And no, I'm joking. It's the same thing. Yeah, you know what? Yeah. This is where like I find it so interesting because see what you're saying about like God. Like I'm not necessarily religious. I believe in God, but I'm not necessarily religious. So my thing sometimes is like I'm more like, you know, when I spoke earlier when I was saying I'm really like in tune with life and stuff like that. Hence why sometimes I don't care about these things. And sometimes I feel like I should care about it. I should care about if I'm going to be giving a speech at this different location because I've done something recently anyways, or if I'm going to this thing, or if Prince Harry's coming down to whatever. Sometimes I feel like I should care about it, but then I go, you know what? Like all of that stuff is kind of like, let's say it's not real, but it's a little bit made up. It's like the statuses and this, and they're not necessarily real tangible things. They're just something that is based on a perception.
So you know what's really interesting is you say you're not religious, but that's a very religious perspective.
I know, that's the thing. Listen, that's the thing. I'm not religious, but I have so many religious philosophies.
And I think that's so beautiful because here I am claiming that I'm religious, but I let them slip. And sometimes I find it hard to live by them. So I genuinely, that's why I love these conversations, because for me, I learned so much from people who claim not to be religious but have these philosophies. My whole personal development journey was kicked off from somebody who was exactly in the same sort of headspace with you. Like, I'm in love with life. I'm not really religious, but I have these philosophies. And then when they were talking to me about these philosophies, my mind was getting blown because I'd never thought about life like that. But then when I realized is when I went down this journey of discovering that, it brought me back to faith. But at the same time, it's the philosophies that are crucial, and what you might call life, I might call God.
Yeah.
I think that in a sentence, potentially they might be intertwined and like they might be interchangeable, but just from two different perspectives. We're looking at the same thing.
Because so potentially we probably believe in the same thing. It's just maybe the description of what that means, and it's just different, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe the means of getting to that space is different.
Yeah.
But then, you know, some people will still argue against that and stuff like that.
There's a quote in the Quran that literally cements what you said, by the way, about all this stuff is made up. The Quran, it says, surely this life is a life of delusion. It's all delusion.
It's interesting they said that. So I've been to a Hindu temple maybe a month ago, and so I'm getting to the point in life where like I'm trying to be. I think I'm realizing I'm 31. I'm realizing there's a lot of things I haven't experienced yet. I still want to be very open-minded of understanding people, their cultures, where they come from, how they think.
Nice.
So I went to so like I met these people. I met actual monks in Shoreditch once. I was waiting for a friend of mine, and they approached me, gave me a book. We had a conversation, exchanged Instagram. I was reading a book a little bit, and I was like, "This is some really interesting content." I actually want to get the book out. I think it's Aladdin, can you help me? It's in my bag, in my gym bag, because there's one part I want to read out on this thing from that book, which I found really interesting. I think it's in the middle. That one there. Yeah. There'll be a book in there. Thanks for that, bro.
Built for athletes.
It's like a little book. Yeah, thanks, bro. So I went to okay, thanks, bro. So
it was rough with it.
So I went to this temple, and there were some really interesting spiritual lessons, you know. And one of the things they spoke about is the illusion thing, and they called it the Maya. No, not the Maya. They call it Maya. Yeah. So Maya's an illusions, and they kind of describe it as like this is everything around us is just Maya. It's an illusion, and we have to be in touch with God and stuff like that. And I found it really fascinating. I still use it till this day. I'm like, I talk about Maya, just like that's my thing. So I look at certain things like money's Maya, or like it's an illusion or whatever. sorry, and I'm sidetracking a little bit
I
as
want to
well.
hear it. Yeah, I want to hear it.
And also in these experiences, so I met someone today, and he does like punk music, like, you know, like, and I'll show you in a second anyway. So like we just spoke, and he goes, yeah, I've got a show in June. In the past, I would have been like, are you dumb? I'm not coming to anything like that. So I looked at the thing, yeah. Let me show you here. And it's like this. Where is it? And I saw the crowd, so I said, you know what? I might actually just go there for the experience. Where is it? There we go.
Oh, one of them ones.
Can you see the crowd?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I've never done anything like that. It's outside my comfort zone. I never would
like
even.
A mosh pit, but
Yeah. So you know what? I'm gonna go. Like it's in June. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try it out. I'm gonna see how it goes.
Is that him? Is that actually? Is that
yeah,
he's
the
guy singing.
Yeah. Well, it's a band. They've got a whole band, but he's the guy singing. Yeah, he's the guy singing. And I was just like, I met him, such a nice guy. We're gonna get him on the pod as well. Like, very different person. I'm looking at that space at what he's doing there. I'm just like, this is very different. It's like, where did that come from? So I'm just gonna go and try it out.
I love that perspective of just like, okay, that's interesting. I'm sure.
Yeah. But you know what? I never used to be like that. So the point I'm making is just, I feel like I'm getting to the stage in life where I have to be a bit more open-minded. But so this is from this book here, and there's this one concept I want to talk to you about, and I want to see what you think. And you know what? I'm actually scared to talk to you about stuff now, because I'm like, I don't want to put you in a position where someone might try to cancel you or you know what I'm trying to say.
If they do, then be my guest.
Yeah. So if there's anything you don't feel like you want to talk about, that's cool. Even though I don't think it's that. So there's so in Hindu there's this saying. So it's called how can I pronounce this properly? Yeah, kshatriya. I'm not sure if I pronounce it, but ksat means injury, and tra or trayat means saves. So they've got these so it talks about how in those times they used to have these kshatriyas, and they're literally called injury saves. So they would kill someone on sight if they knew that injury would save more people. And I was just thinking of it, my mind was just blown, because I started reading. I was just like, they are called injury saves. Like, how can injury save because you're killing someone else? But then when I got it from the perspective of, like, if they didn't do it, more people would die. So that means they are saving, that injury is saving other people. I was just like, wow, this is like, it blew my mind. I wanted to ask you what you think about that, actually. But
when with that, can anybody do that?
No, there were particular type of people that could do that. So they were specific people, not anyone.
Yeah,
they were very specific people, and that's what they were called. They were called injury saves.
Okay, so they are people who roam the earth,
they were called the Kshatriyas.
Yeah,
Kshatriya.
So these are people who roam the earth and would like try and intervene with a situation. If they know that this person's going to grow up to cause harm, they'll try and nip it at the bud.
I guess that was the version of what's the best modern comparison? I guess that's the version of police.
Yeah.
Or maybe like vigilantes kind of thing. Yeah, but they were legally, like, it wasn't a legal system, but they were asked. Was it like a divine?
Did they see it as like a divine intervention? Like
yeah.
Were they?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a religious thing. And they're literally called injury saves. Like, I just find that so fascinating.
So we have a man in Islamic tradition called Khidr. Khidr literally means green, and this man, I just thought of it now, like evergreen, but green. His name is Khidr, and we believe he has been gifted by God the ability to live for this whole eternity of life. He doesn't die. He doesn't age. Doesn't die. He has been alive, and he will continue to be alive, and he roams this earth somewhere. You could never really recognize him. He kind of just blends in, but he's like on a mission. He's that divine intervention. So he lived during Moses' time. So he was alive during Moses' time. Continued, and he continues to this day. There are rumors that they even say that potentially he crossed paths with the Buddha, and he crossed paths within that so Eastern world as well. When he crossed paths with Moses was like, "Listen, I really want to spend time with you," and he was like, "Listen, you won't handle it." And And he's like, no, please, like I just want to spend some time with you. He was like, fine, but you can't ask too many questions. And Moses was like, okay, I won't ask any questions. And they go on this journey, and Moses is always there by his side, and he's watching him do stuff. And there's a couple particular incidents where this guy does stuff that's a bit weird. He does stuff that's a bit strange. And Moses questions him. He's like, why are you doing this? And one of the things that he does, and I don't want to get this wrong, so I wanna like quote it.
Yeah, of course.
Right. But one of the things that he does was very similar to what you just described. So story. Okay. So let's go here. All right.
Hello, Aladdin.
Good thing we weren't doing it. All right. Let me see.
But we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left, and then we go get some food.
Okay, here it is. So basically,
take your time, man. Take your time.
I might ask ChatGPT to simplify this.
Have you been using that?
Yeah, it's banging.
Yeah, no, I love it. ChatGPT is the one.
I actually might copy paste this into ChatGPT and say, "Can you summarize the story for me?"
Do you know what I asked? What did I ask ChatGPT? I asked it about humanity. It gave some really interesting answer. Oh yeah, I said, what do you think about humans? And
yeah,
it gave some really interesting answer. It gave like a neutral sort of like answer, but it said that human beings both got capabilities of either destroying the world or
doing something with it.
Yeah, or doing something with it. I was like, it's not lying. It really isn't.
Pop this in there. I'm actually using ChatGPT.
But that's the thing. But you know when we ask ChatGPT something,
yeah,
technically we're asking that ourselves. We're just asking an enhanced version of human thinking, I guess.
Yeah, that's just been able to condense it and summarize it very quick.
Yeah,
that's what I love about it. For me, I'll copy paste something and I'll just ask it to summarize. Please.
There was another part I wanted to share from this book as well, but I don't think I'm gonna find it. By the way, this is where I'm a bit confused because this book is on teachings of Buddha, teachings of Lord Buddha. But the temple I went to was a Hindu temple, because Buddhism and Hinduism, like they're similar, but they're not the same, right? So I'm a little bit I'm still learning.
Here it is. So yeah, here it is. So they embark on a journey where Khidr performs acts that Moses does not understand, such as sculpting a ship. So he breaks down a ship, just a ship that's parked up. He just smashes it up. Okay. He builds a brick wall. Like there was a wall that was falling over, that was half broken, and he literally rebuilds this brick wall. And the last one is he kills an innocent boy. So there was a kid, and he kills him. And for that last one was like the last straw for Moses, where he was like, what did you just do? Like, how did you just do that? He's like, I told you, you are not going to have the patience to deal with what I have to do, but I am here to divine intervention. That boy was going to grow up to become like evil on this earth. He came from good parents, but something happened where he's not going to be good for this earth. And I'm not doing this because I'm doing it. I've been asked to do this. He had such a pure soul. He had direct connection with God, where God would ask him to perform some things, and he would do that. So that perspective that you brought up is like, that's why I asked, is it divine intervention? Because in Islamic tradition we had that one person who had a very similar path, had a very similar mission, where they would go out there and they would do things because they had a much longer view, and it wasn't necessarily but it's like they were taught. They had access to knowledge of the divine, which allowed them to see that. So I guess that my perspective is that, but it just comes from that one story from the Quran.
Yeah, no, it's literally along the lines of what that means. The injury saves meaning, I guess.
What do you think about it?
I find it fascinating because I think before hearing this perspective or reading this perspective, like I used to look at like, you know, like if anyone's ever being killed, it's wrong. But then I never thought of it of like, I guess there is the whole like vigilante conversation or whatever, but that's never like really appealed to me. But this thing of like injury saves, it's like it kind of gives a bit of justification to actually like if this person would kill maybe, I don't know, 100 people or whatever, it actually kind of gives a bit of like justification. There's a bit more of a, actually that's the word I'm looking for. There's a bit more of a spiritual way of killing someone. It's like injury saves. It's like sounds like a beautiful. I know it's not. I shouldn't be saying it like that, but it sounds like a beautiful way of saying actually it's alright to kill someone in that scenario.
So the interesting thing, I guess, is that us fallible human beings, like if we make mistakes and if we're not connected to the divine in some way, shape, or form, we can very easily think that we're doing the world a favor, but we might be causing more harm than good. It's only if you are completely like, I don't know, like God sent literally, that I feel like something like that stands, but that's very hard to judge. I feel like a lot of people feel self-righteous to the point like, well, yeah, I am God sent, like he's told me, you know, and do that and perform that, which makes it more difficult to manage, I guess. But
I'm not. I don't think I'd ever be in that position of like actually I'm the person who, or I don't think people want to be in that position. I think maybe that's why we have this like whole different system of like, you know, we've got the police, we've got the trials, and you know, people go to court and all these different things.
But our system is so fallible. Like our system is makes so much mistakes, and so many people get thrown under. And like imagine if they gave themselves the same power that they had there, where they can just pop. I guess America's kind of like that, right? They think somebody's gonna cause more harm than good, so they'll just pop them straight away. And that's so wrong. Like you can see the injustice in that. But what's happened is that it's as if those police officers with the guns have been given that sort of self-righteousness to perform.
Yeah, but the thing is, but they don't have that understanding.
They don't have
of that divine, or you know, they don't know what that means, or what that, you know, what that power means. But what I found really fascinating in this book when I read it is that there were people who knew really well what that meant. Like they were like, you know, they were prepared for it. Like that was their whole purpose in life. So yeah, the question is, can you make someone like you by having an argument with them? Is that a possibility?
It depends on how it ends, because it can start as an argument. They could. I think they can. I'm wondering, could they respect you by the end of it? Do you think you can make someone respect you by having an argument with them?
Nah, do you know what it is? I just think about people that I've argued with in my life. I don't like them, you know.
Have you argued with family?
And there's that saying, I don't like them.
You don't like them either?
Like, you know this, but there's a saying of like, they're winning, like, where's it, the price? Okay, they're winning. So if you win the argument, it comes at the cost of maybe losing the person's goodwill.
Yeah. And
the goodwill maybe is connected to liking someone, which is a bit.
Because winning an argument is enforcing your own opinion upon somebody else who disagrees with you. That's an argument. If it's a discussion, then you have half the chance of converting them to your way of thinking. But the moment it becomes two opposing forces that are just clashing, it's an argument.
That's why I don't argue.
Huh?
That's why I don't argue.
Yeah, there's no real tangible benefit to arguments, because they're, like you said, you're either gonna force your opinion down their throat and they're gonna be sour and not like you anymore, because you're like, even if you corner them and you're like, see, got you, argument won, case closed, I won, then they're gonna be like, well, don't need you in my life.
The only person I argue with is Aladdin, actually. I don't argue with anyone else, which I find it really interesting. Obviously, I have disagreements, but when I say argument, I'm like arguing a point. So I'm saying this is the point, saying this is the point, and we're just, you know what I'm saying?
Clashing.
Yeah.
I think you're both stubborn. That's what it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not really. Am I stubborn? I'm not sure. Yeah. I just don't know what to do with my life. But I can't send it to you. How can I send you something that doesn't exist on the internet?
Exist, bro. It doesn't exist, bro.
Doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, let me Let me draw for some of my material.
Backup plans.
Back out the
Backup dances,
evidence, bro.
Aladdin, I don't know.
So long story short, yeah.
This is why.
This is why, bro.
This is why. That's what I'm gonna say.
So I was just looking for something. I was looking for this quote, yeah, and I wanted to see what you think about it. It's called it's by Jimi Hendrix.
I don't know who that is, but continue.
It's like, who's Jimi Hendrix, bro? Huh? No, Jimi Hendrix, the artist.
Yeah. All right. Say no more.
This sounds bad. People are gonna be listening to that. How do you know what Jimi?
I live in a bubble. That's why.
Same. Me too. Jimmy.
He looks like a cool guy. I can't lie. He looks like I'd get along with him. I think I see him.
Yeah, is an American guitarist.
Yeah, I think I'd get along with him.
Jimi Hendrix, man, he's a legend, bro.
I probably, if you play me some of his music,
Hendrix, bro.
If you play me some of his music, or if you play me something that he's created, some of his artwork, I'd probably recognize it. I just don't recognize the name.
All right, listen, I've got a quote for you, yeah.
Go on.
And I'm gonna read it out, and I want to hear your first thoughts that come into your head.
All right.
When it comes to this quote, yeah. So the quote is, "When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace."
The first thing that comes to mind is a podcast episode that I watched between Joe Rogan and a specialist on psychedelics, specifically mushrooms, where he stated that his philosophy is that anybody who goes into a position of power should be taken first before they are appointed any position of power. They should be taken to a shaman, and they should experience what it means to go on a spiritual mushroom trip to discover the power of love before they are appointed a position of power, because he believes that's the solution. Because once they understand that you and I are one and the whole world is interconnected, and if I harm you, I'm harming myself, then they will do things that destroy our world.
That is interesting.
That was his perspective, and that came to mind when you said that.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Do you know why? You know, actually, I wanna actually do. I think it's called ayahuasca.
Yeah, that is so DMT. It's a form of DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which Joe Rogan talks about all the time, and it's very interesting. Do you know what ayahuasca creates in you? By the way, ayahuasca releases a drug which is dimethyltryptamine (DMT) into your bloodstream, and this is a naturally created drug that is exerted into your body, but it's only created in two phases of your life: when you sleep and when you die. So you get like a microdose when you sleep. I believe this anyway. This is what I've. To the best of my knowledge, is how it works. You get like a little dose when you sleep, and then you get like a big dose when you die, and you experience like just a whole new world, basically, from what people have described it as, and that is what ayahuasca is.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I've had so I was in Amsterdam. Was it like a month ago? No, when was it? Must have been like 2 months ago. I can't remember. I think it's like 2 months ago or something like that. I think it was in January actually. Yeah. And obviously, so I don't necessarily like smoke weed or like do any edibles or stuff like that. But I've actually taken so when I went there, I went to a coffee shop and I've taken a like an edible weed biscuit sort of thing. It was called Space Cake, and I've had a moment where. So I've took it, and actually, to be honest, I didn't even know. I was super ignorant around edibles, and so I ate the whole thing. And I think, from what I understood, that people meant to eat it like bit by bit. And basically, I ate the whole thing, and it just started kicking in. So I was having almost like a bad trip, almost freaked out. But I was like kind of sitting there. I was in this kind of space of like thinking, because everything just kept moving, anyways. Like thinking of like how irrelevant I was in the world. And how if I wasn't there, things would still carry on going. Like I had that moment of like this sort of like it, but in a like a really empowering kind of way, and it made me remember like all the other people that are not in a life no more, and how the world just still moved on regardless, and how relevant I am in this world where if I'm not there, it still goes on. It doesn't stop.
How would you say that changed your perception of yourself and reality?
I just don't take things too seriously now. Just like I don't. You know what it is actually? I pay less attention to bullshit. So like the things that are not like irrelevant, like what trainers is someone wearing, or what I don't know, what's the newest trend or whatever, like all those kind of things. I don't care about it too much. Like I still pay, like I might just be like, oh, that's cool and whatever, but I don't really care about it like that.
Interesting.
Or like the gossips or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you sort of unplug from like the little nit and natter of the world, innit?
Yeah.
And I guess it's like there's this form of enlightenment, right? Because it seems like you had like an outer body type of experience where you kind of put yourself in perspective of like, wow, the whole world is like, you know what I mean? Like,
what's been like a significant life event for you? Like something that stood out for you or like changed you completely?
So the one that probably had the most impact at the time was when my grandfather passed away. So I never really used to know my grandfather in the extent of like what he done in his life, which is really sad to say. But my granddad was a scholar, like a religious scholar. He was a physics teacher before that. He taught for like 25 years as a physics teacher. And then he became like an Islamic scholar, and he became like the imam of a mosque in like the toughest time in Iraq, like Saddam's time, where he was taken under for months on end, tortured because of like all of his advocacy for religion at the time. And he basically was the backbone of an entire community. But me growing up in London had no real idea of the impact that he had as a man. Towards the end of his life, his health started to deteriorate massively, and he wasn't really getting the care and attention that you would expect like an elderly person to be getting, which resulted in him developing some bed sores and that resulted in an infection. He was taken over to Syria for people to take care of him, and that sort of escalated until it got to a critical point where my dad once he called me and he called me downstairs and I was like, what's up? And he was like, granddad's really ill. I was like, where is he? He's like, he's in Syria. Thinking like, I had booked a trip to Germany with work to go to like a massive expedition that I was really looking forward to. So much stuff was going on in my life, like life is busy, right? You got stuff planned. And he tells me like, I can't go. My dad can't travel, because he's wheelchair bound. But he's like, listen, granddad, like he needs some help. And I was like, all right, I'm going. So I literally jumped on a plane, and then next thing I know, a couple of days later, I'm there in the middle of Syria, like looking after my granddad in a hospital, and I saw this man like who had served his whole life, who had given his whole life in service of others. In the time when he needed it the most, he had almost practically no one.
Yeah.
And seeing that was so eye-opening, because you realize how important your intentions are. Like, he served his community not for the sake of his community so that one day maybe they can serve him. He served his community because it was the right thing to do, and he done it in the name of God. And when you do something in the name of God, God will test that. And the way he tests that is he strips you away from everything, and he sees whether you're going to be annoyed that the world isn't looking after you, or whether you're going to be at peace because you're actually that all you did it not for something in return, because you did it for the sake of doing it because it was the right thing to do. When he passed, I stayed with him for like 12 to 14 days. Came back to London. A week later, he passed away. The first thing I done is I booked a trip back to Iraq to go and actually do his burial. When I arrived in Iraq, bro, I saw a video on the internet popped up of the people of his community putting banners across the roads with his picture and face on it. And we're talking, like, literally in one street, there was probably like 20, 30, 40 banners of him and his face on it, and like quotes saying, "We're going to miss you, oh father of the orphans." Like, you were the guy who looked after the orphans, and we were the orphans that you looked after us. You guided us through the darkest time when Saddam was causing havoc to our communities. You were the backbone that held us all together. And then when it was time to actually do his burial, bro, I see an entire street flooded full of people just carrying his casket women crying, men crying, old people crying, bro. He had completely carried an entire community, but when he needed them the most, they were unaware. And it literally was like what you said about when you go, it's like the irrelevancy sometimes make you feel that. And it really, really hit me, because it's like you want to live a life of service, and something on the inside of you says, well, I want something to come back at some point, right? But that's your ego speaking, because it's like, well, I'm given, surely I'm going to get.
That's the condition.
Yeah. But when I used to ask my granddad in the hospital, I'm like, how are you? Bro, I can't even describe to you what I was seeing when I was in that hospital. Like, bed sores I'm not sure if you ever experienced bed sores or know about
I'm not
bed
even sure what they
sores.
are.
Are you not too sure what they are? Bed sores? So bed sores are when basically people don't move for too long. The skin starts to like pack itself on top of each other.
Wow.
So the cells start to get really dense, and then they clog up. And then what happens is your whole skin just dries up and it falls out, and it leaves a massive gaping hole in like your back, across your whole body. You leave massive gaping holes that are literally bleeding constantly.
Wow,
And
that's
he had
crazy.
he had a very severe case of that as well. And I saw with my own eyes the amount of pain that this man went through. But when I used to ask him, how are you? He used to say, I'm with God. I'm with God. That's all he used to say. How are you? I'm grateful. I'm with God. And I used to see that in him. And I could tell that he didn't want nothing from no one. He spent his whole life serving. He spent his whole life giving. But he expected nothing in return. That was a massive shift for me. But the cherry on top of the cake was, after a full day on his burial day, we arrived to the grave where we were going to put him in. And before they put him in, I had always wanted to experience what it's like to be in a grave. I feel like that's a very humbling experience. And I decided just before we arrived that today was going to be that day. And where I wanted to be in my grandfather's grave. I wanted to experience where he was going to go. Like, he lived a whole life of service. What does that mean for his hereafter? I was curious to take a look. And I remember we arrived there was about 7 or 8 coaches full of people that had come all the way from Baghdad to this other area to bury him, full of like people that loved him. They arrived, and as we arrived, I jumped off the pickup truck first, and I ran towards the grave, and I saw the guy that had just dug it up, and I was like to him, listen, I want to jump in. He's like, who are you? I was like, I'm his grandson. He was like, be my guest. He holds my hand, and I start to lower myself in the grave. Bear in mind, we're in the middle of Iraq. It's quite, it's Iraq. You'd expect it. It's a desert in Iraq. It's relatively hot. The moment I got into the grave, bro, it became so cool, cold. And I remember my feet touched the base of the grave, and like the sand was so soft. Now, one thing about my granddad's grave is that right next to it was my grandmother's grave. So he was being buried right next to my grandmother, his wife, his wife who had passed away. And between them, all that there was a brick wall. So the way that graves are in Islam is you go in and then you go to the side. So when you're lying there, you're not directly above the hole. You're kind of in like this little crevice. Yeah. So I went down, and I heard the guy from on top saying, "Lie down in that little extension part. Don't just lie down where you're looking up." And I remember the moment I put my feet down and I put my head on the sand, everything just went silent. And in that moment, I had never in my life felt so much peace as I did in that moment lying down in his grave. And I felt the way I had experienced it was, I had my hand on the wall between me and my grandmother's grave. And there was complete darkness on this side. Complete darkness. You're 6 feet under. And I could see the light flooding in from the left, from the hole from the top. And I could feel the darkness was where the warmth and the peace was. And the light was the only thing anchoring me away from that everlasting peace. I felt like I was moments away from feeling so much tranquility, but the light was anchoring me away from it. And for a split second, I wished that they just sealed up the grave and I could just live in that everlasting moment of peace right there.
Wow.
And in that moment, I realized what a life of service creates for your hereafter. I just felt so much peace in the grave. And a grave that my granddad had prepared for himself his whole life.
Wow, I'm speechless, man. That's a powerful experience.
Yeah, that was a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
when I lied down there, I didn't want to get back up again. I didn't want to get out.
Wow.
Felt
The story. Yeah.
I felt like I was in. I felt like I had whatever heaven may be. I felt like that sensation that I felt. I caught a glimpse of
Quite
it.
a split moment.
I caught a glimpse of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there is that interesting thing about that people being scared to die, but also knowing that there's that peace on the other side of it. It's always interesting. It's like what happens, what happens then. You ever had you ever blacked out before? You might not ever have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have. It's not a story I can tell.
Yeah.
But I have blacked out. But I remember the moment I woke up, I felt like someone was looking out for me. Because I was moments from death when I did blackout. Like I was in a foreign country alone, and I could have very easily just poof, vanished off this planet.
So before we start wrapping up, there's this one like interesting thing. So someone I know, he basically died for like 40 minutes.
Wow.
He was pronounced dead for 40 minutes. They were doing CPR. And I think at one point, they were gonna give up, or they were planning to give up, but then he came back to life. But the interesting thing is, like, so ever since he went through this experience, and I'm saying he went through this experience, which is interesting as well. Like, I thought his whole life is gonna change, as in, like, he's gonna look at life differently. Everything's gonna be different. Not to say that it still hasn't had any impact on him, but I remember having a conversation and I was like, look, like, what, like, how do you perceive this experience? But because for everyone else, and from an outside looking in, it's like this was a horrific experience, and people think, yeah, he's gonna change, all of these things gonna happen. It goes, look, like for me, I just blacked out. Like I just wasn't, because he wasn't conscious. It's like I just blacked out and I woke up again. Really? The same way is like if you go to sleep, and you wake up the next morning.
There's all that space in the middle where you just...
Yeah. So like to him, he hasn't necessarily experienced or understood what that even means, because it's like if you're not conscious, it's like how are you meant to know what that means?
Yeah.
In the first place. And I find it really fascinating, and it's the whole thing of like people making up stories about, oh my god, it's gonna be like this, and I was one of those people. But after having that conversation with him, I was like, shit, like that was a good reality check. It's like, what else am I making up, different stories about, and how people experience different things.
Do you think it could also play to play internally for us thinking, oh, if I experience this, then I'm going to be like that, and we set up hopes and dreams of like the transformation that we want to get from certain experiences, and it's kind of an excuse not to make the transformation now, because you're setting it up for this future event that's going to happen that you don't even know is going to have an impact on you or not.
Yeah, 100%. I think we connect ourselves to an experience that someone else goes through, or sometimes in some cases, in her, the experiences that someone else goes through connects with us. It's quite a little bit philosophical.
Yeah. You know what this brings us back to, by the way? Your approach to life of just pure experience.
Yeah.
Because that's experience first with no judgment. Well, and then the transformation.
I would debate that. So, I would debate that experience is life. So I would actually debate that when people say life and when people say experience, I would say that they're not different. It's the exact same thing. So if someone goes, I am living the experience instead of I am living the life, it's the same thing. Because everything's an experience.
So if somebody says, I want to experience life, what would you tell them?
This is an experience, touching this, having a conversation, an experience, reading is an experience, everything is an experience. So life is an experience.
How could one increase their, like the perception of like what could somebody do if somebody feels like, okay, I'm alive, I can recognize that, but I don't feel like I'm experiencing it as much. How could they start to make that shift?
I don't know. I think so. Till this day, like I haven't figured out what happened for me to make that shift. It's not something I can, and I don't think it's something I can tell people to do, or even if there was a formula, I think people still need to find out their own sort of journey And maybe it's like what I'm experiencing, maybe it isn't for everyone to experience. Maybe just for me. That kind of feels a bit like special, you know. It's like, maybe just for me. But I'd love for everyone to experience it. Just to kind of know, just, you know, even if they don't decide to live that way. Because I think it's a nice thing to experience. But yeah, I'm not sure, man. Just, I think even, for example, like little things, like if you go to a shop, I think being conscious of what experiences we pick. So, for example, if I go to the shop and let's say I go to the crisp packet aisle of like to buy a packet of crisps and stuff like that. Like, if I'm aware that depending on which packet I buy, I'll have a different experience, I think that's a good starting point. Same with drinks. If I buy a different flavor drink or if I buy water, like every drink is going to give me a different experience. You spoke about earlier, you spoke about the 5 people spend time around with. A person's an experience. You are an experience.
Yeah.
You're a walking experience, talking experience, living experience.
Yeah. Experience,
But yeah,
experience.
so all of that stuff. It's quite interesting. Can also add one more thing, yeah, before I ask you the last question. There's one thing that I admire about Islam, and there's that saying of like, and I find that really like, find that it sits really nice within resilience, or I don't want to like make it a little bit less meaningful by saying resilience, or like it sits really well with the perspective of like whatever life throws at me, I'm gonna handle it. And it's that thing of that God doesn't throw anything at someone that they know they can't handle.
Yeah.
So there's always that thing of like there's gonna be learning in there.
100%.
I find that really I admire that.
I think, you know, was to connect that point directly to the point that you mentioned earlier about you not knowing how you got to where you are. God, or in another reality, life, you could say, threw experiences at you until it got you to that point where you are. Because you mentioned you weren't always like this, but it took you on your own very unique journey to get there. There's a quote within Islamic tradition that says, the number of routes to God are equivalent to the number of souls that exist. So the routes to enlightenment are completely unique. Every single person will have a completely unique experience in the way that they get to God or enlightenment, or that overflowing sensation of experience where they feel like they are experiencing reality. There is no set path, but what God does is He puts those things in your path to give you that unique experience that will create the transformation from within. And I think that's beautiful. But yeah, you're right. Like, God doesn't give you a calamity, or He doesn't give you a burden, or He doesn't give you anything that He doesn't know that you can handle it.
Yeah.
He's got to put your mind to it.
Yeah. No, I find it really empowering. So there's been a bit of changes since, so how we check out, there's been a bit of a change, just a small little shift.
All right.
So we're coming to the part where it's like there's something, so yeah, we're talking about if there's something you want to promote, and there's 2 parts to it now. So one is like promoting something that doesn't belong to you. So that could be anything, literally anything. Can be a video, can be a book, can be, I don't know, can be a program, whatever it is. So there's something that, promoting something that doesn't belong to you and something that does belong to you.
Interesting. Put on the spot here. Promote something that doesn't belong to me.
I'm just gonna pull something up while you think.
Yeah, no problem. Could I just say I want to promote this podcast, or is that a cheap way out? I genuinely do, because I appreciate the perspectives that you guys collate on here. And I think it's a unique place that people can come and just express themselves, and I think that you guys have built something special to make this what it is. Every time I come here, I learn something new. I expand my mind in a different way, and I just appreciate you guys and everything that you put out there, and I just wish you all the best in everything that you do. So I want to promote the, Beyond the Surface podcast.
We love you too, man.
That's what I want to promote. That's not mine.
I appreciate it. We love you too, bro. And yeah, and so something that does belong to you.
guess I want to promote a thought that nothing truly belongs to us.
Mm.
And I think I'm starting to learn that slowly. Yeah, I'm slowly learning that, and I hope I can internalize more a detachment from this world.
Mm.
And I feel like that will help me on my journey to my why. The more I detach from the world, the more rooted my why would be. Because as we mentioned, it's a delusion.
Yeah.
What was the word that you said?
Maya.
Maya.
Yeah.
You know, this world is Maya.
Yeah.
And the reality is far beyond what we can perceive. And I think life is beautiful, but life is just a signpost to something greater. So I guess what I want to promote is a thought which comes from my mouth, but isn't mine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just pointing to a perspective that just lets go of this. And I as I say this personally as a reminder to myself, because I feel like I need to do this more. And over the past couple of months, I've been learning that, and I hope I can cement that into my being.
Yeah, I love the fact that you said that, because while I was saying it, I was thinking about I was going to say it. I don't want to like add confusion into the thing, but I was thinking actually nothing really does belong to us. So it's and then you said it, I was just like, wow, like it's a that thing, which is really cool.
I hope that made sense. Yeah, I hope that made sense.
No, that makes perfect. I knew exactly what you're saying. I knew exactly what you're saying straight away. And look, this is your third time now, so you know the last question, but there's been a bit of a change in population, at least they say so. But when you get a chance to say something to 8 billion people, what are you gonna tell them?
Don't underestimate the beauty of the little things.
Mm.
Stop and appreciate them. That's it.
Love that, man.
Yeah.
I love silence. You know what? Silence is so powerful, man.